He kicked me out and threw $50 at me. I used it to win $10 million jackpot, and now he wants half. Part 2. Hello family, welcome back. Please do well to subscribe and let's know where you are watching the story from in the comment section. The courtroom smelled like old paper and lemon polish, the kind of place where people whispered like they were afraid of waking ghosts. Rachel Miller sat at the long wooden table, her hands folded tight in her lap. She had picked a navy dress that didn't draw attention but made her feel steady. Across from her sat Mark, sharp suit, shiny shoes, and that same smirk that had haunted her since the night he threw her out. The judge hadn't walked in yet. People shuffled papers, tapped pens, and cleared their throats. Rachel could hear her own heartbeat. Linda Carter, her lawyer, leaned close and spoke in a low voice. "Remember what we practiced. Breathe slow, don't rise to his bait. Let me do the talking." Rachel nodded, though her throat felt dry as sand. Mark was watching her. He leaned back in his chair, one arm stretched out like he owned the room. When their eyes met, he mouthed a single word. Half. Rachel didn't flinch. She kept her face calm, but inside she burned. The bailiff called out, "All rise." The judge entered, black robe swaying, eyes sharp like a hawk's. Everyone stood. Rachel's knees wobbled, but she stood tall. "Please be seated," the judge said, settling behind the bench. "This is the matter of Miller versus Miller, regarding the equitable distribution claim filed by Mr. Mark Miller." The words hit Rachel's chest. Miller versus Miller, like their marriage had been chewed up and spit out into paperwork. Mark's lawyer, a tall man with slicked back hair, rose first. His voice was smooth, like he'd practiced in front of a mirror. "Your Honor, my client, Mr. Miller, supported his wife financially for nearly a decade. During that time, she contributed little to the household. Recently, Mrs. Miller purchased a winning lottery ticket, securing a $10 million jackpot. We argue this prize qualifies as marital property and should be divided accordingly." He paused for effect, glancing at Rachel like she was already defeated. "Mr. Miller provided for her when she had nothing. Now, in fairness, the court should ensure he is not left with nothing." Rachel's jaw tightened. Her palms pressed flat on the table. The judge looked at Linda. "Counsel?" Linda stood, crisp blazer catching the light. Her voice was calm but strong. "Your Honor, the facts are clear. On Monday night, Mr. Miller forced my client from their home. He threw her belongings into the rain, gave her $50, and told her their marriage was over. On Tuesday morning, Rachel Miller, separated and abandoned, purchased the lottery ticket in question. This was after Mr. Miller's clear act of separation. It was her purchase, her risk, and her reward. It is not marital property." Rachel exhaled slow. Linda's words felt like armor. Mark's lawyer smirked. "We dispute the timing." Linda lifted a folder. "We have evidence, Your Honor. A motel receipt showing Mrs. Miller checked in Monday night immediately after being forced out. A recording of Mr. Miller confronting her at that motel 2 days later. And text messages from Mr. Miller's phone showing an ongoing affair while still married. The timeline is not only clear, it is damning." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. The judge raised a hand. "Quiet, please." He turned to Mark. "Mr. Miller, is it true you asked your wife to leave on Monday night?" Mark leaned forward, playing at innocence. "Your Honor, couples argue. People say things in anger. I was upset, but I never intended for her to be gone permanently. It was temporary." Rachel's chest flared. She wanted to shout, "You dumped my clothes in the rain." But Linda's hand on her arm reminded her, "Hold steady." Linda rose again. "Your Honor, I'd like permission to submit into evidence Exhibit A. Text messages retrieved from Mr. Miller's phone." She handed copies to the judge. The judge adjusted his glasses and read. His brow furrowed. "Jessica, can't wait to see you again tonight. I've missed you so much." Mark, "Soon, babe. She's still here, but not for long." The judge looked up slowly. "Mr. Miller, can you explain this message, dated 3 days before you forced your wife out?" Mark's face flushed, then smoothed into a fake grin. Your Honor, that was taken out of context. Jessica is a friend, a comfort during hard times. My marriage had been struggling. I may have said things I regret. The judge leaned back, unimpressed. Linda pressed on. Respectfully, Your Honor, this was not a temporary argument. Mr. Miller had been planning his wife's removal for months while maintaining an extramarital affair. He cannot now claim rights over her lottery winnings when he abandoned her, mocked her, and financially cut her off. Mark's lawyer jumped in, voice louder. Objection. Counsel is testifying overruled, the judge said flatly. Mark shifted, his confident mask starting to crack. He leaned forward, whispering harshly to his lawyer. The lawyer nodded and stood again. Your Honor, even if my client behaved poorly in the marriage, the fact remains, they were still legally married when the ticket was purchased. By Ohio law, that qualifies as marital property. Rachel's stomach twisted. This was the line she'd feared. The law didn't always care about fairness, but Linda was ready. She walked calmly to the center of the room, her heels clicking like a clock. Your Honor, Ohio is not a community property state. It follows equitable distribution. The court considers separation dates, contribution, and fairness. We have sworn statements, receipts, and recordings showing the separation occurred before the ticket purchase. Furthermore, we have evidence of Mr. Miller's intent, his own words, saying she wasn't going to be around much longer. This was not a marriage, it was a staged exit. The judge scribbled notes. His face gave nothing away. Mrs. Miller, he said suddenly, turning to Rachel, stand, please. Her legs felt like sandbags, but she stood. Do you confirm the events as your attorney described? That you were removed from the home Monday, checked into a motel that night, and purchased the ticket Tuesday morning? Yes, Your Honor, Rachel said, her voice soft but steady. That's exactly what happened. And you have not reconciled with Mr. Miller since? She shook her head. No, sir. I've never gone back. I won't. The judge studied her face for a long moment. Rachel forced herself to meet his eyes. Finally, he nodded. You may sit. She sank back into her chair, heart pounding in her ears. Mark's lawyer shuffled papers, clearly rattled. Your Honor, regardless of the details, this case is about fairness. My client supported Mrs. Miller for years. He paid the bills, kept a roof over her head. Without him, she would not have been in a position to buy that ticket. Surely the court can see he deserves a portion. The judge held up a hand. I've heard enough for today. I will review the evidence and issue a ruling at a later date. He stood. Court is adjourned. The gavel struck. People rose. Rachel's breath finally whooshed out. Relief mixed with dread. No final answer. Not yet. As the room emptied, Mark stepped close, just enough that only she could hear. His breath was sharp with coffee. You think this is over? He whispered. You owe me. One way or another, I'll get mine. Rachel's skin crawled. She turned her face away and walked out without a word. Linda's hand pressed steady at her back. Outside, the sky was grey, heavy with clouds. Reporters lingered by the steps, microphones ready. Rachel pulled her jacket tight and kept walking. She didn't owe them a story. Not yet. But inside, a vow burned clear as fire. He could chase. He could threaten. He could twist the truth. But she wasn't the woman who left that house in the rain anymore. He wanted half. He was getting nothing. If you haven't subscribed yet, I'd love you to join our community by hitting the subscribe button. Through our stories, we build hope and give future to children and women abused all over the world. Motivate us by subscribing to hitting the subscribe button and turning on your notification bell. Also, let us know in the comments where you are watching us from and how this story hit home for you. The courthouse steps were slick with drizzle, the kind that made every surface shine like glass. Rachel walked fast, head down, while Linda matched her stride. Cameras clicked, voices called out, Mrs. Miller, did you really win 10 million? Are you planning to share with your husband? Rachel, over here, smile. She didn't stop. She didn't smile. She kept moving like a shadow, trying not to be caught. By the time she reached Linda's car, her hands were shaking. She climbed inside, shut the door, and pressed her palms flat on her knees. Linda started the engine. You did good in there, she said, her voice steady. You stayed calm. That matters. Rachel stared out the window. He's not going to stop, is he? No, Linda said simply. But that doesn't mean he wins. The first week after court, Rachel tried to live quiet. She cooked simple meals in her little apartment. She went to the shelter twice, chopping vegetables and folding laundry. The women there didn't treat her like a news story. They treated her like another pair of hands, and she clung to that normalcy. But Mark wouldn't leave her alone. The first sign was the phone calls, dozens of them back to back. He left voicemails in his practiced, syrupy voice. Rach, let's not make this ugly. We can work something out. Don't be stubborn. You know half of that belongs to me. You owe me after everything I did for you. She stopped listening. She let them pile up like trash at the bottom of the bin. Then came the visits. Twice she caught the black SUV idling across the street from her building. Once, when she came back from the grocery store, she found a note tucked under her wiper blade. We need to talk. Stop hiding. M. Her chest clenched, but she tore the note in half and dumped it in the trash. Still, the sight of his handwriting left her unsettled. His words slid under her skin like splinters. That night, she called Linda. He's watching me. Document everything, Linda instructed. Dates, times, notes. If he steps over the line, we file for a protective order. Until then, do not engage. Silence is your weapon. Rachel nodded, even though Linda couldn't see. I'm trying. I know, you're doing fine. At the shelter, the women noticed her tired eyes. Maya, the volunteer with the gentle laugh, nudged her one afternoon as they set plates on long tables. You okay, Rachel? Rachel forced a smile. Yeah, just noisy nights. Maya gave her a knowing look but didn't press. Instead, she handed Rachel a stack of forks. Here, focus on something solid. Rachel did. The rhythm of setting the table calmed her heartbeat. Fork, knife, spoon. Fork, knife, spoon. Later, when the women and children gathered to eat, Rachel caught sight of a little girl coloring at the corner. The child held up a page with a purple horse wearing a crown. Rachel laughed softly. That's beautiful. The girl grinned, missing 2 teeth. She's a queen horse. Rachel felt something stir inside her. She had spent so long feeling like the thrown-out wife, the discarded one. But here was a child who saw queens in horses. Maybe she could learn to see queens in herself again. But Mark pushed harder. One rainy Thursday, Rachel returned home to find her door unlocked. Panic flared in her chest. She froze, listening. Silence. Slowly, she pushed the door open. Her apartment looked untouched. Couch still neat, dishes where she'd left them. But on the counter sat a white envelope with her name scrawled in his handwriting. Her stomach twisted as she opened it. Rachel, stop fighting. You know this money belongs to both of us. Don't force me to take it the hard way. Her knees weakened. He had been inside. He had touched her space, her things. Hands trembling, she called Linda. He was here. He left a note. Call the police, Linda said at once. Then meet me tomorrow. We'll file for a restraining order. Rachel hung up and did exactly that. 2 officers arrived, checked the apartment, and wrote up a report. They treated her politely, but with the kind of weary faces that said they'd seen too many men like Mark. That night, Rachel sat in bed with every light on. She held her phone like a lifeline. But instead of listening to his voicemails, she pulled up the shelter's website and clicked the donation link. She gave $10,000 through the Sunstone Trust. Anonymous. No name, no story. Just help. For the first time that week, she breathed easier. The next morning, she met Linda at her office. The lawyer scanned the note, jaw tight. "Good," she said. "Now we move forward. This proves harassment. It strengthens our case." Rachel's voice cracked. "But what if he doesn't stop?" Linda's eyes softened. "Then we make sure the law steps in. You are not alone in this, Rachel." Those words clung to Rachel like a rope in a storm. Days passed, and she began to rebuild small routines. Morning coffee, evening walks, chopping onions at the shelter kitchen. She felt stronger, steadier. But Mark wasn't done. The third Saturday after court, Rachel walked back from the bus stop with groceries when she heard footsteps behind her. Quick, heavy. She turned. Mark. He wore another too shiny suit, his hair slick with rain. His grin was wide and fake. "Rach, finally," he said, spreading his arms like they were old friends. "You've been dodging me." Rachel's pulse raced, but she forced her voice steady. "You're not supposed to be here." He shrugged. "It's a free street. I just want to talk." "No." She gripped the grocery bag tighter. "You lost that right." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You really gonna freeze me out? After everything I gave you? I paid the mortgage. I fed you. I made sure you didn't starve. And now you win the lottery, and what? You think you can cut me out? You cheated on me," Rachel said, her voice sharp now. "You threw me in the rain with $50. You don't get to rewrite that." His smile flickered, then snapped back. "I was stressed. Jessica, she wasn't what I thought. But we're still married. That means half. My lawyer says so." She almost laughed, bitter and tired. "Your lawyer is wrong, and so are you." He leaned close, his eyes cold. "You'll regret this." Rachel didn't move. She held his stare until the sound of a car horn from the street made him step back. He smoothed his jacket like nothing had happened. "We'll see each other in court," he said. Then he turned and walked away, his shoes splashing through puddles. Rachel's legs shook, but she stood tall until he was gone. When she reached her apartment, she set the groceries down, pulled out her phone, and hit record. Her voice was calm, almost too calm. "Saturday, 4:15 p.m. Mark confronted me outside my building, threatened me again, said I'd regret not giving him money." She saved the file, emailed it to herself and to Linda. Then she sat on the couch, hands trembling, heart pounding, but a strange fire rising in her chest. She wasn't hiding anymore. She wasn't shrinking. If Mark wanted a fight, she was ready. The courthouse smelled the same as before: old paper, lemon polish, and nerves. Rachel sat at the plaintiff's table, her hands folded tight to keep them from shaking. She wore a plain black dress this time, nothing flashy, nothing that said money. She wanted to look like herself. Across the aisle, Mark leaned back in his chair, all shiny suit and smug grin, tapping his pen like he already knew the ending. The judge walked in, gavel cracking once. "Court is now in session. We are here to resume Miller versus Miller." His voice was steady, calm, the kind that could slice through noise. Mark's lawyer stood first. "Your Honor, my client has provided documentation showing that during the marriage he paid all major bills, supported his wife financially, and maintained their home. Without his support, Mrs. Miller would not have been in a position to purchase the winning lottery ticket. We argue this jackpot falls under marital property and should be divided equitably." Rachel's stomach turned, but she kept her eyes on her lap. She'd heard this speech before. Linda rose next, smooth and steady. "Your Honor, the timeline is critical. Mr. Miller forced my client from the home on Monday night, gave her $50 and told her the marriage was over. She checked into a motel immediately after. The following morning, while separated, she purchased the ticket. That money is hers alone. We have the motel receipt, the police report documenting his harassment, and multiple recordings of Mr. Miller admitting she was no longer welcome in their home." The judge nodded. "Very well. We'll hear testimony. Mr. Miller, please take the stand." Rachel clenched her hands tighter as Mark swaggered up to the witness chair. He raised his right hand, swore to tell the truth, and sat down with the confidence of a man who thought truth was optional. The lawyer approached him. "Mr. Miller, did you support your wife financially during your marriage?" "Yes," Mark said quickly. "I paid the mortgage, the bills, everything. She didn't contribute. She sat home while I worked." Rachel bit the inside of her cheek. She wanted to shout, "I cared for your mother day and night while you stayed out late." But she stayed quiet. "And what happened on the night in question, Mr. Miller?" "We had a disagreement," Mark said smoothly. "Things got heated. I told her maybe she should stay somewhere else for the night. That's all. I never meant it to be permanent. Couples fight. We cool off. That's marriage." "Did you intend to end the marriage at that point?" "No," Mark said, shaking his head with practiced sincerity. "Absolutely not. I loved her. I still do." Rachel nearly laughed out loud. Loved her? He had tossed $50 at her feet like trash. Linda rose. "Cross-examination, Your Honor." The judge nodded. "Proceed." Linda walked slowly toward Mark, holding a stack of papers. "Mr. Miller, you said you never intended the separation to be permanent. Is that correct?" "Yes," he said firmly. She held up the first page. "Exhibit A. A text message you sent to Jessica Daniels 3 days before your wife left. It reads, 'Soon, babe. She's still here, but not for long.' Would you like to explain that?" Mark shifted. "That was taken out of context. Jessica was a friend." "A friend you called babe?" Linda pressed. "A friend you promised would have more of your time once your wife was not around." Mark's face flushed. "We were just talking, nothing serious." Linda raised another page. "Exhibit B, photographs sent between you and Ms. Daniels over a 6-month period. Would you still call that nothing serious?" The courtroom stirred. Mark's lawyer objected, but the judge overruled. Linda stepped closer. "Mr. Miller, on Monday night you told your wife to leave. Did you throw her belongings into the rain?" He hesitated. "I may have tossed some things near the door." "Near the door. Police reports and her sworn statement say you dumped them outside while it was raining." Mark's jaw tightened. "I was angry. People do things when they're angry." Linda leaned in slightly. "And after that, did you hand her a $50 bill and tell her, 'That's what you're worth'?" Mark's eyes flicked toward Rachel, then back to Linda. "That's exaggeration. I gave her cash so she wouldn't be stranded." Linda's voice cut sharp. "So, you admit you gave her $50 and sent her away with nowhere to go?" Mark's face twisted. I was under stress. My mother had just died. I wasn't myself." Rachel watched the mask slipping, his shoulders hunched, his charm faltering. Linda turned toward the judge. "No further questions, Your Honor." The judge looked unimpressed. "You may step down, Mr. Miller." As Mark returned to his seat, he glared at Rachel like she'd stolen his crown. She kept her eyes forward, refusing to give him the satisfaction. Next, Linda called Rachel to the stand. Her legs felt weak as she walked up, but she placed her hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth, and sat tall. "Mrs. Miller," Linda began gently, "tell the court what happened on Monday night." Rachel took a breath. Her voice shook at first, but steadied as she spoke. "He told me he was done, that I was dead weight. He threw my clothes into the rain and shoved $50 at me like I was nothing. I had no place to go. I checked into a motel across town. The next morning, I bought the ticket with the change I had left." "And since then, has Mr. Miller threatened you?" "Yes," Rachel said firmly. "He's called, left notes, followed me. He came to my door at the motel. He showed up outside my apartment. I recorded him saying I'd regret not giving him money." Linda nodded. "Your Honor, we have those recordings, time-stamped and verified. We also have the motel receipt and police reports confirming his harassment." The judge accepted the files. His expression stayed hard, but Rachel thought she saw a flicker of sympathy in his eyes. Mark's lawyer stood for cross. "Mrs. Miller, Isn't it true your husband supported you for years, paid all your bills? Yes, Rachel said calmly. And isn't it true that you didn't work for 2 years before the lottery? I didn't, she admitted. Because I was caring for his mother, bathing her, cooking, cleaning, every day. He never lifted a hand. The lawyer blinked, caught off guard. But Rachel leaned forward, her voice clear now. I wasn't sitting home doing nothing. I was giving care he refused to give. And when she passed, he threw me away for someone else. The lawyer stammered, then sat down. The judge folded his hands. I have heard enough for today. I will review all evidence and issue my ruling next week. He struck the gavel. Court is adjourned. The room buzzed as people stood. Mark's lawyer whispered urgently to him, but Mark brushed him off. He made his way toward Rachel, eyes burning. You think this is over? He hissed. You humiliated me in there. You'll pay for that. Rachel didn't back away this time. She looked him dead in the eye and said quietly, No, Mark. I already paid. For years. And I'm done. Linda stepped between them, guiding Rachel toward the doors. Don't engage, she whispered. But Rachel already felt something shift inside her. The fear was still there, yes, but underneath it was steel. She had faced him, told her truth, and the court had heard it. Outside, the air was bright and sharp. The sky had cleared after the morning rain, and sunlight bounced off the courthouse steps. Reporters swarmed again, but Rachel kept walking, her head higher this time. She didn't have a ruling yet, but for the first time in years, she felt like she had already won something bigger, herself. The call came on a Monday morning, early enough that the sun was still working its way across the kitchen floor. Rachel had just poured coffee when her phone buzzed with Linda's name. Her hand shook a little as she answered. Good morning, Linda said, warm and calm. You ready to breathe? Rachel gripped the counter. Tell me. We have the ruling, Linda said. The judge found the winnings are your separate property. He cited the separation, the evidence, the timing. He dismissed Mark's claims for marital share, unjust enrichment, and constructive trust. Rachel pressed the heel of her hand to her eyes. Say it again. It's yours, Linda said, steady as a lighthouse. All of it. He also granted the protection order, 6 months with extension if needed, and he ordered Mark to pay a portion of your attorney's fees due to his harassment and bad faith. A little laugh escaped Rachel, more breath than sound. I don't even know what to say. Say nothing, Linda said. For once you don't have to fight. You won. Rachel leaned against the counter and let the words sink in. You won. It felt unreal. It felt like a warm hand on a cold shoulder. It felt like relief so deep it made her knees weak. When do we go back to court? Rachel asked. We don't, Linda said. Unless he violates the order or files some new nonsense. But this was the big one. She paused, her voice softening. You did this, Rachel. You told the truth and you stood your ground. After they hung up, Rachel stood in the quiet kitchen for a long time. The coffee cooled. The clock ticked. She picked up the crumpled $50 bill she had kept tucked inside a book on the counter. It was still wrinkled, still mean-looking. She smoothed it with her thumb and smiled. Later that day, she walked to the shelter with a box of donuts and a good secret sitting warm in her chest. The kitchen buzzed with the usual noise. Pots clanging, someone laughing, a radio playing a song from 10 years ago. Maya spotted her and opened her arms. You look different, Maya said, hugging her. Did the sun move closer to you or something? The judge ruled, Rachel said, a simple sentence that felt like fireworks. It's done, Maya whooped, loud and happy. That's what I'm talking about. Come on, tell me everything while we slice onions. They leaned over cutting boards and Rachel told the story the way you tell someone you trust. Short, clean lines, no need to prove anything. When she finished, Maya wiped her eyes with the back of her wrist. Proud of you, she said. Proud, proud, proud. Me too, Rachel said, surprising herself. For the first time in a long time, I am. That afternoon, she met Linda one last time to sign final papers. The office smelled like paper and lemon cleaner, same as the first day. Linda set a small frame on her desk, a photo of a beach at sunset. Planned vacation? Rachel asked. Someday, Linda said. For now, I'll settle for good endings. She slid a folder across. There's one more thing. If you want to formalize your donations, we can set up a giving fund through the trust. Clean, anonymous, flexible. I want that, Rachel said. I want to help, but I don't want my name on it. I don't want attention. We can do quiet, Linda said. Quiet is powerful. Before Rachel left, Linda touched her elbow. He may try one more time. People like him don't, except no the first 10 times. Remember, you have the order. Call the police first, then me. I will, Rachel said. For a week, the world felt soft at the edges. Rachel slept through the night. She took long walks and learned the names of trees in her neighborhood. Maple, sycamore, a tulip poplar that dropped big, strange flowers. She bought a second-hand bike and rode it to the farmer's market on Saturday, just to prove to herself she could move fast and free if she wanted to. On Sunday, she went to a small frame shop with the $50 bill in her pocket. The store was quiet, rows of frames leaning on walls like picture soldiers. The clerk was an older woman with silver hair and bright eyes. "What are we framing?" the woman asked. "Something ugly," Rachel said, half smiling. She laid the wrinkled bill on the counter. "It's a reminder." The woman looked at it, then at Rachel. "Want me to press it a little? Keep the wrinkles or smooth them out?" "Keep some," Rachel said. "Not all. I want to remember, but I don't want to live there." They chose a simple dark frame and a cream mat. The woman wrote down Rachel's note for the bottom of the mat. "Not my worth." When Rachel picked it up a few days later, she stood in the shop and stared at it longer than she expected. The bill looked small behind the glass. It didn't scare her anymore. Mark showed up once, exactly as Linda had predicted, like a storm that didn't know the forecast had changed. It happened on a bright afternoon in the parking lot outside her building. Rachel saw the black SUV first, then the shape of him leaning against it, pretending he belonged in the sun. He pushed off the car when he saw her. "Rach," he said, easy voice, hands out. "Let's be adults." She stopped a safe distance away. "You're not supposed to be here." He smiled like rules were for other people. "I heard the ruling. Judges get things wrong, sometimes. We can still make this friendly. You cut me in, we shake hands, everybody moves on." "No," Rachel said. The word felt calm in her mouth. "You had your chance to be decent. You didn't take it." He stepped closer. She held up her phone, screen already open to the recording app. He stopped and laughed, but it was a thin sound. "You really think that paper shield can stop me?" he asked. "I built your life, Rachel. You were nothing." She felt a flash of the old pain, then it passed. "You didn't build me," she said. "You broke things. I learned to fix them." He stared at her like she'd spoken a language he didn't know. He took another step. She pressed a button. The phone dialed and the speaker chirped. 911. What is your emergency?" He raised both hands, backing toward the SUV with a curse. "You're out of your mind," he snapped. "This isn't over." "It is," Rachel said, and for the first time she knew it was true. He drove off, tires complaining. She stayed where she was, let the dispatcher know she was safe, and then called Linda. They filed a report and sent the video. After that, he disappeared. Not like magic, but like someone finally saw the fence and chose not to climb it. Time moved in steady shapes. Rachel found a small brick house for sale on a quiet street not far from the shelter. It had a yard that could hold a garden and a porch that squeaked. The kitchen had a window over the sink and a line of sunlight that crawled across the floor each morning like a promise. She bought it through the trust, signed papers with a hand that didn't shake, and stood in the empty living room listening to the house breathe. She bought furniture that was built to last, a bed that didn't wobble, a table big enough to feed friends. shelves for books she had carried through too many moves. The framed 50 went on, the wall by the front door, where she would see it each time she left and each time she came home. She kept volunteering. The shelter started calling her on the days they were short, and she never said no if she could help. Quietly, through the fund, she paid for a new industrial dishwasher, for a security system, for a safe room with a heavy door and a soft couch. They named the new kitchen after the trust because that's how paperwork works. But someone taped a small paper sign to the fridge that made Rachel laugh. It said in a child's handwriting, "Thank you, Sunstone. You make warm food." One evening, while ladling soup into bowls, Rachel felt a light tap on her shoulder. She turned. Alvin stood there, the gas station clerk from that first night and morning, the one who had sold her the ticket. He looked older than she remembered, or maybe just tired. He held his hat in both hands. "Didn't know you volunteered here," he said, shy. "I come by some nights, help with delivery, a friend runs the bread route." Rachel smiled. "Good to see you." He cleared his throat. "I owe you an apology. Back when it all happened, I might have said too much at a bar. Just talking, not meaning harm. But harm went anyway. I'm sorry." She studied his face. He looked like a man who knew his words had sharp edges. She nodded. "Thank you for saying it. It matters." He let out a breath he'd been holding. "If you ever need anything carried or fixed, I'm pretty good with my hands." "I'll remember," she said, and she would. On a Tuesday afternoon, she kept an appointment she'd been putting off. Therapy in a quiet office with a ficus plant and a box of tissues that didn't pretend not to be there. The counselor was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and an easy laugh that never felt forced. "What bring you in?" the counselor asked, settling into a chair. "I want to make sure the money doesn't turn me into someone I don't like," Rachel said. "And I want to make sure the past doesn't follow me into rooms where it doesn't belong." "That's honest," the counselor said. "We can work with honest." They talked about storms and doors and the way words can bruise. They talked about guilt that wasn't hers and fear that had worn grooves in her mind. They talked about kindness as a choice you can make for yourself, not just for other people. Rachel left feeling lighter, like the air had more room in it. Sometimes, after her session, she stopped at a little coffee shop on the corner. One day, she ran into Darren, her old supervisor, the one who had texted to check on her when everything fell apart. He was stirring sugar into his coffee with a wooden stick that didn't look up to the job. "Rachel," he said, surprised and pleased. "Hey." "Hey," she said, smiling. "You still saving the world with spreadsheets?" "Trying," he said. They sat and talked about small things that mattered. The best turkey sandwich in town, the worst parking in history, how time slips and stretches. He didn't ask about the money. He asked if she was doing okay. "I am," she said, and she meant it. In the fall, the shelter held a little open house for donors and volunteers. It wasn't fancy. Paper cups, cookies on foil, a speech from the director that made everyone laugh and cry in the same minute. The new kitchen shone, not glossy, but clean and strong. On the wall, a plaque read, "For every woman told she is less, you are more." Maya found Rachel standing there, reading it twice. "You did a good thing," Maya said. "We did," Rachel said. "All of us." When the first cold snapped the air, Rachel planted bulbs along the fence of her new yard, little brown promises tucked into earth that would remember them. She wore gloves that were too big and learned to pat the soil down like a baker smoothing dough. A neighbor waved from across the street, and Rachel waved back the way people do when they plan to know each other for a long time. That night, she made soup and ate it at her table with the window cracked to let in frost and the smell of leaves. She wrote a letter, the one she had put on her list in that motel room, the one to herself. She wrote about who she'd been and who she wanted to be. She wrote about not becoming hard. She wrote about choosing quiet over noise, kindness over winning, truth over control. She folded it and put it in a drawer for the days when the sky would forget to be blue. Before bed, she stood by the framed 50. She touched the glass just once, like tapping a memory to see if it still held. Not my worth, she said, reading the words out loud. Her voice didn't shake. Outside, the wind moved through the trees, rubbing branches together like old friends. The house settled. A soft crack here, a sigh there. Rachel turned off the lights and stood for a second in the dark, listening to the kind of quiet that doesn't hide anything. The storm was over, and this time, the sky was hers. The end.